To second for one. Oh my word, you've got to be kidding.
Evan Mendoza.
For Mendoza lifts one to left.
An inning.
Mendoza, that one's sailing back there, and it's gone.
Now, those are some of the plays and the insights of playing baseball at the highest level, not just posting about it. Now, let's flip the script. Here's what my students and families have to say about working with me.
Just share his stories of the kids asking him, what did you do? And his one answer was one word: Evan.
It's an overall great program to improve your metrics, mental approach, your velocity, and your outreaching strategies. Because there's a ton of players I know that are way better than me that had zero offers because they don't know how to reach out to coaches.
Pretty much every possible number would have gone up. I was high 70s and now I'm aiming for mid to high 80s and hitting the same thing. I was high 80s off machine and now I'm able to put some balls out in the mid 90s.
JT's motivation to want to do it at home, be proactive in his baseball career, and we are able to do these things for him, and it's self-motivated and he's taken that action. As a parent, you want to be able to say yes to something like that.
It's been making me feel much more confident. Like now going into the season, I feel I have all the ability I need and I can just lay and trust that all the work I did will pay off.
I started working out, I was about 120, 115, about 160 now. I trusted it and it worked. If you want to go get it, it's not going to come to you.
My EV was about 75 and my body weight was around 155, around that. Since I joined that, I'm up to almost 180 now and I'm hitting 80s, around mid 80s.
How much more kind of committed he was and how much more confident he became in his own progress, instead of questioning himself about, am I doing the right thing or is this the right thing? So you could kind of see the stress level decrease a little bit, and then that energy could be focused on really all of the program aspects, right? Or his workouts.
Do that. If you could get on and do what you said day in, day out, it's amazing. Like a game changer.
Through your program, I just realized like how much more I could learn. I could just feel the improvement over the course like of 4 or 5 months. Like you said, I could feel the improvement myself. With you being able to supply me with this type of structure, I'm able to just learn for myself and learn how to improve by myself, which makes me feel a lot better as well as a lot more accomplished in the end.
You can give him guidance and he can always ask questions to you. I could see how he became more confident after talking to you every time.
All right. Welcome into another episode of Coffee and Baseball. Guys, I'm your host, Evan Mendoza. I played 7 years of professional baseball between the St. Louis Cardinals and the San Diego Padres, and I love to be able to talk with you guys about some baseball, learn a little bit about baseball, and hopefully develop and grow into the player that you want to become. So let's start off. As you guys know, let's switch this over, and we're going to be switching both digits today. We are on day 30 of 50, streaming every single day at 11 a.m. Eastern time. Welcome in, guys. If you do have any baseball-related questions, feel free to ask. That is why I am here. If I want to stretch more, what stretching routine should I do? AJ, great question. So as far as stretching, there's really not, we don't need to overcomplicate it, but we definitely do have to focus on what we need to be focusing on as a vehicle, right? Because at the end of the day, like if you guys watch F1, if you watch NASCAR, we are a vehicle that needs to be designed for speed, explosiveness. We need to make sure we're putting in the right fuel, that's nutrition and other things. But we also make sure that we need to have these tune-ups as well, right? So AJ, for example, these tune-ups are making sure that we're doing correctives. So in pro baseball, what we really refer to this as are correctives, right? And correctives, by the way, if this is the first time that you're ever joining into a Coffee and Baseball, put the baseball emoji down below in the chat. That way I know that this is the first time that you're joining in. But AJ, correctives are basically, it's pretty simple, right? We're trying to correct our body. Think about, again, that F1. You have to maybe, tighten that bolt a little bit more. And that's basically correcting that engine to make sure that you're able to, as a driver of that F1 car, being able to produce the best results. So correcting is basically correcting a certain area of your body. And this is typically only done at the professional level because they have so much more data on us in a good way, right? They want to make sure that they're protecting us and making sure that they're giving us the understanding of like what potential injuries we could face if we don't correct them. So there's typically like 3 categories, in my opinion, for 3 categories, in my opinion, as far as correctives and where to be focusing on. There's hips, ankles, and T-spine. So basically, those are the 3 most common. So T-spine, basically think about like I'm sitting in the chair right now, if I have the inability to just twist my shoulders and not twist my hips, right? So that's basically that hip-shoulder separation that we hear so much about in all these videos that you come across on Instagram and TikTok and YouTube, right? But hip-shoulder separation, that's basically T-spine. So think about like a Bretzel 1. Bretzel is a great movement to work on that T-spine. Now, as far as ankle inability or immobility, I think that's the word that I'm going for, but basically some people have lack of range of motion or lack of mobility in your ankles. And surprisingly enough, if you do have this and you do face this is something that actually results in lower power output off of the ground and lower power output when we're also sprinting. So typically less explosive when sprinting and sprinting not as fast. All right. The last one, and this is the one that definitely I had to focus on the most, is I had very, very tight hips. So that's just something that I remember in pro ball. It wasn't always fun, but I had to go through extensive processes of making sure that like my hips were staying mobile. And still to today, like in the middle of the night, my hips lock up like crazy and I get really, really tight. And that is usually what causes me to toss and turn. So like ideally when we're talking about stretching, we really want to be thinking about how can we correct a certain movement to train our bodies to perform in a little bit of a better manner. So hopefully that answers your question. AJ, great question to get us started. We also have Nathan Ruiz. Should I go to a showcase as a freshman in high school? I say absolutely yes, just from my experience. So freshman year, I did go to a showcase, right? And so I went to this showcase and I ran a 9.5 second 60. And if you don't know what a 60-yard dash is, it's basically how fast you can move from yard 0 to yard 60. It's as simple as that. And I'll never forget a week later when the results came, this was the 60-yard dash times. Evan Mendoza was right here. And then there's one other kid, right? So I was the second slowest. This is the fastest. And this is the slowest. So I was way down here in that first ever showcase that I ever attended. And this is where I got some metrics. I remember I threw a bullpen without even like really properly warming up. And I'll never forget, like that was the worst thing ever. Like I just didn't have a plan in place. I didn't have a structure and I was kind of winging it at a showcase, which I'm happy I just didn't get injured because that can happen as well. But yes, like I think going to a showcase your freshman year is okay. Don't expect to get like scholarships though. This is something that you need to do for yourself more than anything. Because if you go to a showcase your freshman year, you get some of these metrics. Like for example, if I never went to a showcase, I would have never have known that my 60-yard dash is as bad as it was. And then let's just say I went to my first ever showcase my junior year of high school, that's going to be too late for me to really address that and focus on it. And I'll never forget, once I got that, I worked extremely hard to like, okay, let's get that better. That is not acceptable, right? I need to get faster. And I wasn't always the most athletic kid in high school. I think that's something that it's important to know, because a lot of you probably think that like, oh, I was a pro baseball player and this and that. Like, I wasn't always a pro baseball player as far as like the athleticism that most baseball players you would see today. I'm gonna go ahead and grab this guy so that way we can do that. All right. All right, we got another question up in here. Yo, Brennan, welcome in. AJ, absolutely, my man. AJ, another question. So best way to gain weight, best foods to eat. So in my opinion, think about a plate, right, for dinner, for example, right? In my opinion, what you want to be focusing on is really half of the plate. What we really want to be focusing on is having a protein. And this is just like the simple way of going about nutrition as a baseball player. So let's kind of just go over it step by step. So what are the best ways to gain weight as a baseball player, and what are the best foods to eat? So I don't necessarily think it's all about the best foods to eat. It's more about the system and the structure that you have as far as a certain framework. So think about like half of your plate. So this is a typical plate. Half of your plate, in my opinion, should have a protein. Now, the other basically quarter of the plate, this is where over here, what we really need to be focusing on is having a carb. And a carb is basically like a potato, a sweet potato, rice, there's pasta, right? There's other ways to get that protein. Now that last area, in my opinion, I don't know if this is going to work properly, but that last area right there, what we need that area to be is a color, right? So basically we have a protein, a carb, and a color. Again, if you need a little bit more of a breakdown of what these are, I can definitely help you out. Like protein are going to be like a chicken, a steak, for example, a fish, right? A carb, any type of rice, any type of potato, sweet potatoes were usually my favorites, and a color that's pretty self-explanatory, anything that's colorful, carrots, peas, broccoli, anything like that. And if you use this framework on all meals, you will be in the right position. Now, if you're just eating cereal, like where does cereal really fit into this category? Not really anywhere, right? It is technically like a carb, but it's just a really processed carb. It's not a natural carb. The other area that we kind of missed out on, and it's definitely helpful to add in, is just like this small other area for fats, right? And think about fats. One of the best just go-to fats are going to be avocados. If you just add an avocado to every single plate, that's where you're going to be really, really great as far as getting that extra lever on what you're putting into your body to ultimately fuel your body. I've made this comment before, but like we are Ferraris, and you don't put regular fuel into a Ferrari. You put that premium gas, so that way you can have that premium performance. Hopefully that makes sense. Does that make sense though? I want to make sure that clears up with the nutrition component, because that's obviously really, really important. Best way to gain weight. We already did that one. I thought there was another question. If I were to go undrafted, why did that not show up over here? Let me check what's going on. Nathan, if I were to go undrafted, not the mindset, could I go play in Japan or indie ball? And what are the next steps after college? Yeah, why did that didn't show up, unfortunately, over here. So I'm kind of sketched out that not all comments are going to be posted over here. Okay, I'll keep my eye on it. If I were to go undrafted, not the mindset, yeah. Could I go play in Japan or indie ball? And what are the next steps after college? So if I understand your question correctly, I believe what you're telling me is you do want to go to college. And if you were to go undrafted out of college, what to do in this area, right? Because ultimately you go to college and you go undrafted from the MLB. Let me know if that's what you're meaning, Nathan. But yeah, this is where like there's different avenues to get into affiliated ball. And if you don't know what affiliated ball, it's basically when you're affiliated with a big league team. So think about like the minor league system, AA, AAA, etc., right? If you go the indie ball route, this is what typically will happen. So you go the indie ball route, you typically will play anywhere from like 1 to possibly like 5 years. And then what's going to happen is, no worries. You'll get into like affiliated ball over here, and you'll start sometimes at like the lowest rookie A, right? Rookie ball, basically. And you start at rookie ball, and then basically you have to climb your way to like low A, and then you have to climb your way up to high A, and then you have to climb your way up to double A, you have to climb your way up to triple A, and then you have to climb your way up to the big leagues, right? It's just a never-ending ladder, it seems like, and especially if you invest so much of your time here, and then you have to start all the way at the bottom. By the way, like you have to perform at each of these levels to get to that promotion, and they're not going to promote just anybody. So it is a lot of a longer process to go that route. If you don't go to college and you go straight to indie ball, that's where like you could be an indie ball grinder, and basically all you do is play indie ball for 5 or 10 years, and you'll never get an opportunity at affiliated ball. Now, indie ball can be fun, but it's just not the route that I would personally take because I didn't enjoy the lifestyle of what indie ball would have provided. I never played indie ball, but I've heard stories. It didn't seem fun in the capacity of like what I was looking for, and that's why I never went that route. Best way to take care of your arm if you have arm pain, you have to do arm care. Hopefully that answered your question, Nathan. Not a complicated question. It can be complicated if you don't ask the question, though. And that goes for everyone. If you have any baseball related questions, feel free to ask. That's why I'm doing these lives. I want to make sure that you guys get the best quality instruction as possible for free, and want to make sure that you obviously are enjoying this type of content. So if this is the first ever Coffee and Baseball, by the way, guys, this is a Coffee and Baseball. We're live on Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook. Bring your coffee. This is typically for parents. Not the coffee, but these lives are typically for the parents, right? Most players are hopefully at school. But yeah, let's get into it. How does the recruiting work after high school? So, John, not entirely sure what you mean by that, right? So, like, are you talking about like the transfer portal when you're already playing for a certain university, or are you talking about like, hey, I'm not even playing my freshman year of college? Let me draw this out. So, like, basically play senior year, not play freshman year. Like, are you talking about this situation? Yes, thank you. So I would go try play overseas or something for the best route to play affiliated ball. So like that's even a pretty difficult route, but like I've had some buddies that like absolutely kill it in Japan and then they get their way back into the big leagues. Typically what happens is they go the affiliated route, play until like AA or AAA, they go play overseas, and then they come back and possibly get like a big league deal with a big league camp invite to spring training. That's something that just happened to Casey Kelly. He went to my high school and he's getting back. But yeah, so if you're like doing a non-playing year, your freshman year of college, it is very difficult to get back into the game because there's no track record of what you're providing to these college coaches, most importantly, right? You have to be able to provide something in the aspect of like, hey, this is, you know, what I did my freshman year. And if you don't play, it is going to be very difficult. If we're talking about more of a, and again, like, I don't know what yes means because I kind of asked multiple things and I think we're on a little bit of a delay, but like, if you're talking about the transfer portal, that's where like you play your senior year and you play also your freshman year, right? But this is where you're like deciding, I don't want to stay here. I don't like it here. I want to move. I want to change things up. And that typically comes with a couple of different areas, right? And that I would probably say the area it comes with the most is like, I'm not playing right now, so I want to change things up. Well, if you change things up, there's no guarantee that you're going to play at that next college, right? I am more of a firm believer that you want to only go through the college recruiting process once, your senior year of high school, so that way you don't have to go through it 3 more times when you're in college. And that is a process that unfortunately some people will do. And it's just more of a headache, right? Having to communicate with these college coaches 3 or 4 times. Just do it once, make a right decision once, so you don't have to keep doing this. But like, if you ever feel in this position where you're playing or you're on the team or maybe you're not traveling your freshman year, I don't want you to get into this mindset of like, I need to change to be happier or to do this or to do that. Like, in my opinion, getting after it and basically just going to work, basically going to the gym, going to the cages, making sure that you do everything possible, that's what's going to give you the best chances to ultimately play your sophomore year. And there's really not that many high school baseball players that do play their freshman year. I think that's something that like maybe the expectations are not set correctly, but like, you know, you're a stud your senior year of high school, and then all of a sudden it's like, I'm not playing my freshman year of college, right? So these are things that like I think just the more understanding that you truly have with everything, the better off you'll be. And the more preparation you are to really ultimately bridge that gap from high school into college, that's the area where a lot of people will go wrong, is because you go from one area to another area. You don't understand what this is really going to be like until you get there. And that's where like it really does help to have someone that's already gone through that process, that's already kind of paved that way to understand that, again, you only want to go through the college recruiting process one time. The more that you do it, unfortunately, it's not always fun. So guys, if you have any baseball related questions, feel free to ask. What I'm going to be doing here probably in the next 10 minutes or so, I'm going to share over my computer screen, kind of go over a little bit of a slide deck on like what you guys are probably facing, and most importantly, what the time frame of college baseball recruiting will look like. So stick with me for another like 10 minutes or so, and we're going to be starting that up. But before we get that started, again, if this is the first ever Coffee and Baseball you've ever joined into, drop a baseball emoji down below in the chat so I know it's your first ever Coffee and Baseball. And let me know any specific situations on your son, where he's at, or anything like that. Now, I do want to hit on a couple of misbeliefs or really mindset shifts that I think high school baseball players and parents could both really benefit from. So being busy is not the same as getting better, right? So again, busy is not equal to better. And let me explain, because busy, it's not what most people think. And getting better, it's also not what most people think. It's basically making sure that we're doing the right thing. So doing busy work, in my opinion, this is what I look at. It's basically you're in this motion or this cycle of staying the same. Kind of think about like a hamster wheel, or maybe let's just call it, a treadmill. This is a treadmill, right? Those are my drawing skills. You're on this treadmill, but you're staying put, right? This is you running on a treadmill. You're not making any progress. You're just kind of staying put, right? You're not making any progress. You're not moving towards your dreams and goals and everything, right? So staying busy just because you're doing it doesn't mean you're actually progressing and getting better to where you want to be, right? So getting better, in my opinion, this is when you're actually on a little bit more of a structured like workout program. That's when you're going to be doing a lot more, baseball specific work, right? Specific, and you're basically following a path, right? So what I just mentioned right here is the difference between being busy and being better, right? Because those two are not created equally. Being busy, that's basically you're just like in this hamster wheel of doing the same stuff. You're on this treadmill, but you're staying put, right? You're not making any progression. You're not moving the needle whatsoever. Getting better, that's actually moving the needle forward towards your dreams and goals on a little bit more of a structured plan. Maybe it's baseball specific rather than like your generalized weight training that your football coach or strength coach who does bodybuilding. And then also we want to make sure that we have that pathway to be able to follow, especially like when we're talking about the whole recruiting game. There's a lot of people that stay busy because they post on X or they send a couple of emails, but they don't have the actual tracking softwares to make sure that what they're doing is being as effective as possible. So that's where that better conversation comes in, not just staying busy, not staying on that hamster wheel, but ultimately moving that needle towards your dreams and goals. Yo, and antisense, what does that mean? What we got, Macomb? How we doing? Hope everyone's having a great day today. Guys, like I said, in about 10 minutes, I'm going to be sharing over a little bit of a slide deck on the overall recruiting timeline, so stick with me, and then that way we'll go over everything that you might be asking as far as the whole college recruiting process, where you feel like you might be at right now. And then that way you can have better questions possibly by going through that whole process. But guys, if you have any baseball related questions, I urge you to ask away. You can only get better as the questions that you ask get better. That's a mindset that I do really, really believe. All right, so let's talk about a couple of other things. So like velocity, right? So velocity, yes, it will get attention, but really what will help you progress to that next level is that command. And I want to talk a little bit about the difference really between velocity and command. And this comes with a story. Back when I was at NC State, there's a guy by the name of Tim Naughton. He threw about 97 miles an hour. That's pretty fast, right? I think we can all agree that's pretty fast. He pitched a combination throughout his 3 years at NC State before he got drafted. By the way, he did get drafted by the Orioles and actually turned out to be a pretty solid pitcher all the way up to the AAA level. But he's throwing 97 miles an hour. Pretty impressive, right? I think if he was ever watching this video as well, he would probably agree as well. He did not have an ounce of command. And that's why, in total, I pitched more than him. And I was only a pitcher for 1 year. And I pitched, I think, 18 innings. He pitched like a total of 8 innings in 3 years. 8 innings in 3 years. Wild. He was also a walk-on. I think that's an important aspect as well. But he lacked command by a million, right? He was not a good pitcher really in that regards. I think he got really tensed up. Might have had a little bit of a case of the yips, right? But basically, like, the velocity got him into the door at NC State. But what really will keep you there is having both, right? The command and the velo. For example, there was a guy, our Friday night guy, he was throwing typically 85 miles an hour as a left-handed pitcher. Really good changeup. And he had really good command, right? He was a starter, and he did not have the velocity. He also got drafted, played a little bit of pro ball. But the command is such an important aspect of everything that you've got going on, especially as a pitcher. So like I said, like, that velocity will help open that door, get you that attention, right? But at the end of the day, the most important thing is like making sure that you know how to use that velocity and keep that attention on you through and through. All right. Cool. Guys, if you have any baseball-related questions, feel free to ask. Okay, this is a good question. So let's talk about projectability. So projectability is a term that coaches, and especially college coaches, will love to throw around, especially when they want to be nice to you, right? So if you're 5'10", 110 pounds, you're a shortstop, you run a 60 in like a 7.3 as a 2027, and your arm is like 83, your exit velocity is like 94, like pretty good exit velocity, okay arm, junior year, 7.3 60, still 5'10", 110, right? Like he's a shortstop, so middle infielder, he's a good athlete. He's just not ready right now. He's not ready to get a scholarship from, school XYZ, right? They're just not ready. So what these college coaches will tell that individual, hey, you're really projectable, but let's keep up the hard work and then we'll get there one day, right? So basically 5'10", not really something that screams something that college programs, especially at the D1 level, are going to be wanting. 110, undersized, but like that undersized makes him somewhat quick, makes him somewhat of an athlete. Even with his frame at 110, he's able to throw 83. That's like impressive, right? But still, these college coaches aren't necessarily gravitating towards it. Exit velocity 94 as a 110 pound individual, like he knows how to whip it, right? But using the word projectability, these college coaches will basically sum up that individual, someone like this, that's like, they're kind of there, but they're kind of not. They need to do something extraordinary. And this is where, in my belief, when we focus on your overall player development and your overall playing profile, and this is one of the very first things that I talk to all of my students about once they hop on inside the program, is like, we want to make sure that you understand what you're good at and what you're not so good at. So that way we have that understanding of where our table is, basically, because we create a table and we want to make sure that we have like an understanding visually on what areas are we good at, what areas are we not so good at, so that way we can chip away at the not so good areas and really trying to perfect those great areas. And the thing is, like, if we don't have that one area, if we're just like flatlined all across the board and we're kind of mediocre in everything, that's unfortunate for a high school baseball prospect, because you never want to be in that middle ground. You don't want to be in the middle, right? You want to have something great in one category. That's it. So for example, like this individual, if for example his arm was 92 with a 110 pound frame, that screams like, oh, he's quick twitch, he's amazing, whatever. By the way, like Mason Wynn, he was probably like 130 pounds when the Cardinals drafted him. It was incredible. I was there his first year, is the COVID year. Very, very thin, and he obviously started to put on a lot more weight. But anyway, like if the 60 time with a 5'10", 110 pound frame, if that was like a 6'3", that's going to scream, hey, wow, he's an athlete, and that jumps off the board, right? But with kind of this example, this is an example, by the way, player profile, like there's some areas where they're good, some areas that they're not. That's where it's really going to come down to like the performance in game. And let's say, for example, this player has a performance in a WWBA perfect game tournament and they absolutely go off and hit 2 home runs and scouts are watching, like, yeah, you better believe there are going to be some offers after that, right? Because they thought that there was nothing really on the board for this individual. They're projectable and they're just waiting for something to emerge as far as a great performance or whatever the case may be. So hopefully that, gives you some clarity on how like college coaches will use the word projectable. It's for really those individuals that like show promise, but there's just nothing to be said right now. There's no offer. There's no real true interest. It's more like, hey, we will be interested if you can start to figure out maybe 1 or 2 areas of your game that, really will level up your overall player profile. Does that make sense? And that's something that I want you guys to be as open as possible. Like whenever I give you guys an explanation, whether it's on nutrition, development, mindset, recruiting, whatever the case may be, if something doesn't make sense, like ask for clarity in the chat. That's why I do these. I want to make sure also that you guys like have the best knowledge possible to understand certain things in the whole college recruiting process. So yeah, guys, ask questions. So just because I want to, and I'm the boss here, we're going to go over that slide deck that I mentioned. So if you stuck around, great job. We're going to be going over the recruiting timeline for high school baseball. All right. All right. We're going to move that over. All right. Can you guys all see the screen? Can we all see it? We good to go? Just let me get like one person to let me know that you guys can see everything A-okay. And then we'll be on the road. Can you guys see the screen? All good. All right. I believe we are good to go. All right, so here's what we're going to do, guys. At any point in time, if you have any base-related questions, just simply ask. Okay, we can see. Let's go. All right, so let's talk about the recruiting timeline and how your son can actually get offers, get noticed, and stop guessing. And most families, typically speaking, what's the best way to contact a high school coach? What do you mean by that? Are you talking about like a middle schooler trying to play in high school? Because if that's the case, like I'm not necessarily the best person for that, because I typically help high school baseball players who are currently in high school communicate with college coaches. So I don't know if you meant college or what exactly. I'm not entirely sure. Detroit Sports Talk, what was your question there? But if you're talking more about middle school trying to get in contact with a high school coach, sometimes through the school board, but like typically that's not where communication really happens, and there's not much that the coach will be able to really do, unless like maybe he owns like a travel ball team or something like that. But anyway, most families have no plan. So here's the step-by-step process that's helped my players go from overlooked to getting recruited. And before we get started, who is this really for? Like I'm a high school and I want to play college ball. So if you're trying to communicate with college coaches, that's different, dude. So obviously you want to be communicating with college coaches, not high school coaches. But either way, yeah. So like if you want to communicate with college coaches, that's where reaching out and making sure that you have the ability to reach out to these college coaches is really important. What's the best way to update your profile from 2026 to 2027 Perfect Game? Are you talking about like reclassing? Because if you're talking about reclassing, it might have to just be done through Perfect Game. That's more of like just like a technical question with them on their website. But all right, let's talk about it. Who is this for? So if you're a parent of a high school baseball player who is serious about playing college baseball and he's looking for guidance and development without chasing evaluation events or taking lessons from maybe an underqualified coach or spending thousands on a recruiting service, and if your player is hungry, coachable, and ready to level up, this will be the most important roughly 20 or 30 minutes you spend this high school season. So let's talk about a little bit of an agenda. So we're going to go over the recruiting timeline for high school players. We're going to talk about the triple play, and I want to also give you guys some bonus gifts if you stick around until the end. So let's talk about first and foremost, like who is my program not for, and who is this like presentation not for? So if you are in 7th grade or younger, this is not for you. Players who need to be reminded to do the work, this is not for you. Parents who care more about recruiting than development, this isn't for you. And families looking for a magic shortcut or a quick fix. Athletes who ghost their coaches and skip that accountability. Anyone who isn't serious about actually playing college baseball, this is not for you. Bottom line, this is not, and the triple play is not a hand-holding program. So if that's you, get out of here. This is not for you. It's really for self-driven players who want real results and are willing to earn them, not be given to them. So let's talk about who the triple play is for. If you're currently in 8th grade or older, that's something that's actually has been modified. We typically only work with high school baseball players, but on occasion, a very dedicated 8th grader will work with. High school players who are driven, coachable, and want to compete at the next level. Families who are tired of guessing and want a real plan to get recruited. And athletes who already train hard, but need structure, exposure, and accountability. And players who are late bloomers sometimes, or maybe overlooked, underdeveloped, or stuck on a team with no true guidance. And parents who want to support their son without doing all the heavy lifting for them. If your son is serious about actually getting better, getting noticed, and getting an offer, this was built for him. My brother plays high school baseball, and I want him to get the opportunity to play at the next level. He's a junior and starts on varsity baseball. He's a starting shortstop. Let's go, Derek. Or Detroit Sports Talk. So if that's the case, like he might be perfect for the triple play, but I'm going to continue on. Make sure to send my stuff his way, whether it's on Instagram, YouTube. Send over a YouTube video, maybe even this live, and we'll go from there. So why does this even matter? So college coaches aren't watching random games and hoping your kid is going to stand out, right? The game has changed, and if you don't have a clear plan, you're falling behind. So I want to tell you guys a little bit about a quick story. Earhart, who mentioned that there were players better than him, but they didn't know about how to go about the whole college recruiting process, and they didn't receive offers while he did. Those were his exact words. You can check it out on my client case study interviews of Earhart. He literally mentioned there were players that were better than him. Yeah, the Triple Play is my program. It's a remote training program for high school baseball players, especially around their junior year of high school. So by the end of this, you'll know exactly how my students are landing college commitments, right? You can see Earhart in the bottom right landing that college commitment. This was last fall, I believe. And then also some real results, like Derek, who decreased his 60 time by almost a half of a second. His exit velocity went up about 8 miles an hour. His velocity went up about 4 miles an hour. JT had 8+ miles an hour of arm velocity, 8 in exit velocity, about 0.15 seconds off of his pop time, almost a 0.4 off of his 60 time, even though he's the catcher. And this is all without wasting money on random showcases, spamming 200 coaches on a recruiting service with no true plan, relying on high school or travel coaches to handle it for you, burning out from overtraining with no true results, and traveling over an hour to hit with your local hitting guru. It's important to also know, like, why should you even listen to me, right? So I was a 4-year varsity starter on my high school teams. I played at the D1 level at NC State University while studying aerospace engineering. I was drafted by the St. Louis Cardinals and later played 7 years of pro ball between the Cardinals and the Padres. I represented Team Columbia in the World Baseball Classic, and I've helped millions through online free content. And yes, millions, guys. Every single month we get over 1 million views. So we've been doing this since 2019. So you can do the math, right? Every single month that passes, maybe let's just say 12 million a year times, maybe we're approaching 100 million views in the past, I don't even know, 5-6 years. And thousands in my DMs, and I've personally coached hundreds inside my private academy. And this is really built on the Triple Play system after living it as a player. And I didn't have a coach in high school who really walked me through this whole process, so I really wanted to become that coach for others. I've emailed so many coaches for my brother and no responses. The problem with that is you're the one emailing for your brother. That is the true problem if we're going to take into it. What will be the best way to let college coaches know you are reclass in 2027? Listen up. So most families have this backwards: waiting for the high school coach to make it happen, attending random showcases without a plan, thinking a highlight reel is the key. And you don't need that exposure first. You really need the foundation and a timeline. So we're in the middle of an absolute recruiting whiplash, right? I think I love this video. It's always a fun one, right? We're in a whiplash, and it's all about recruiting. And the rules keep changing. 1 week it's about exposure. Next week it's about GPA. Another week's about using a recruiting service, right? Then it's about throwing harder, hitting home runs, and doing another showcase, right? But wait, what about turning your son into a baseball influencer on social media? Obviously that's something that parents probably have to go through, and parents are reacting to everything but moving towards nothing. And kind of like what I mentioned, you're kind of in that treadmill, you're in that hamster wheel of not really doing anything, and you're being so much more reactive than proactive. So most players are stuck in motion, not in progress. And that's, again, what I mentioned earlier. You guys are busy but not getting better, right? So then came the portal tsunami. So now high school baseball players are competing with 22-year-old transfers with 400 college at-bats. Coaches aren't waiting on potential. They're already recruiting that production that's happening. So the window to stand out has gotten even tighter earlier and more competitive. If a player doesn't have a real plan, he's not even in the conversation. And yes, recruiting will always be competitive. I absolutely hate it to my bones when parents will say oh, the recruiting process is getting more competitive with the portal and this and that. Recruiting and getting to that D1 level has always been competitive. It's not going away now, next year, or in 10 years. It's always been competitive to play D1 baseball. And that's why guessing doesn't work anymore. If you can't afford to really keep weighing it, in my opinion, you don't want what everyone else is doing. And that's definitely not going to be enough. And because everyone else isn't getting recruited. So why would you ever want to be the average high school baseball player. And this is really why I built the AAA system. And it's not about doing more and staying busy. It's about doing what works in today's recruiting world. And let's talk about really the recruiting timeline overview, grade by grade. So around that 8th to 9th and 12th, 10th to 12th, all right? So if we're talking about the whole college recruiting process, 8th through 9th grade, this is a little bit of like a speed bump. Who gets nervous about like a speed bump when they're driving? Probably not many people, right? But if you don't take any actions 8th, 9th, 10th grade, throughout the years, might be junior year, it might look like Mount Everest. And then all of a sudden you're looking up and you're just like, holy cow, I don't know where to get started. I don't know how I'm ever going to climb this. Like, what in the world? How am I going to do this? This is impossible. That's what it's going to feel like if you don't take any action. So for those 8th graders, this is really the foundation here of building routine. Make sure that you're taking care of your body weight, light weights in the gym, maybe heavy on like that athleticism and agility in the gym. And also, this is important to like visualize that future. There's nothing that says you can't do that. And again, recruiting is a speed bump, so do not focus on it too much. But the earlier you start, the clearer the path will be. So the 9th grade, this is kind of that identity year. This is where you don't want to go through the crowd or with the crowd. You want to be that black sheep. And if you want to be that baseball, like 1% of baseball players, you have to be that black sheep. Embrace it. So if you are mentally developed and a great fundamental player, try your best to make varsity. That is the biggest goal freshman year, that if you can achieve that, you can really get tested with better competition. By the way, I talk about mentally developed. I don't talk about physically developed because when I was a freshman, I was 5'7", maybe 130, 140 pounds. I think 140 is kind of given a little bit too much. But I was a varsity on freshman. I was not physically developed into anything super crazy. And you should know how to lift by now with good form. You know, lifting mid-season, absolutely. And you should have a clear-cut routine by now. But for those 10th graders, this is really about that visibility year. Critically, you need to know your metrics. That's your 60 time, arm velocity, exit velocity, pop time, home to first, things like that. And your metrics are way more important than your stats. So start understanding possibly your major that you want to study. Get a feel for local colleges or maybe out-of-state colleges. Maybe go to a camp or showcase. And if your player is a college caliber, he is not asking himself questions like, how bad do I want it? Can I play college baseball? What should I do now? But if your son is a college caliber player, he is telling himself, well, obviously I'm going to play college baseball. That's just part of the path. It's that level of confidence that's really built into his bones. So now let's talk about 11th grade pre-August 1st. So this is really more or less for the sophomores, which is about to be pre-August 1st. And this is really that leverage year where you can pave the way to a successful August 1st. I was at a Mall of America my August 1st, and I remember receiving a few phone calls from Power 4 schools saying, hey, Evan, how's it going? And basically I was like, hey. And they're like, yeah, we can contact you now. I'm like, yeah, cool. But yeah, you should have a contacted list of interested schools. And that's where you are interested in them and they are interested in you. Guys, if you're not getting phone calls August 1st, they're not interested in you. You're not on their short list. It's kind of like dating, right? At the end of the day, like, they have to be interested in you, but you also have to be interested in them. It's a win-win ideally for both, and that's where offers are made. And scholarships are earned. This is all really done by focusing on the speed bump before it turns into a mountain, though, right? Before it turns into Mount Everest. And this is where, unfortunately, I meet players and their families within the academy. Like, when we hop on eligibility reviews, unfortunately, this is where I speak to families, and, my team will speak to families. And unfortunately, like, this is where there's so many questions about whatever the case may be. And unfortunately, like, that's where players and families will feel absolutely lost in the whole college recruiting game. So now let's talk about 11th graders for post-August 1st. And this is, again, that leverage year. Now it's the midterm, right? That basically we remember in high school and in college there was midterm exams. Did you get a call or text or email from a college coach directly personalized to you, or was it just a camp invite and you're just trying to, crave that attention from these college coaches? Do you have a good reason that they are interested in you? Again, this is the clarity on, like, we'll ask questions all the time on eligibility reviews. Are you in contact with any college coaches? Yeah, all the time. And it's funny because, like, I can tell by the response because it's, like, usually sophomores that say this. Yeah, Alabama and Coastal Carolina, they're contacting me all the time. Okay, well, first off, that's amazing if that's the case. But second off, I know for a fact, because I know the baseball world and how it works, Alabama, and we also speak to hundreds of families every single month, so you believe we've heard those schools before. And there are certain schools that blast out camp invites, blast out letters through the mail, blast out emails, and basically through those blasts, you think that they're actually attracted to you. Again, it's like dating. Imagine if someone basically blasted out, imagine if a guy at a high school asked out every single girl to the prom, right? How special would that random girl right in the middle like really feel, right? So we have to think about that. That's the same thing that's happening in the whole college recruiting process. Like, they're reaching out to everyone and you feel like they're communicating with you directly, and that's not the case, right? So do you have a plan to get more conversations, ideally around that August 1st of junior year and beyond it? This is also where we want to be physically developing and making noticeable progress in 2 of the 3 major metrics. Again, 60, arm, or exit velocity. Now, for those 12th graders, this is like the final push. This is where ideally our metrics have to be matching up with that college caliber program sooner than later. So that's where exit velocity like has to be 95 plus off of a tee. Arm velocity should be in the upper 80s. 60 times should be under like a 7 seconds. And are you squatting, deadlifting, and benching heavy? Ideally, like those are the areas that are important. Like, those are the very basic movements. And I just generalize those because, like, if you're not doing any of those heavy because you're scared of injury or this or that or whatever, at the college level, you will have to do those things. And if you're lacking in the weight room, you're probably lacking in the physical development. So the simple question is, are you ready to compete against 21-year-olds? And that's what I kept preparing myself for every single year that I was in high school. And really, are you nurturing the relationships with the college coaches, especially if you're uncommitted? Are you sending progress reports? Are they asking for progress reports? So now you know where you're at. But what should I do now? So what most programs miss. They miss the development because they're just a recruiting agency. Maybe you just do like 1 hour lessons a week. There are also 6 other days out of the week, and 1 hour a week is child's play. So you might just be doing tournaments. You don't mix the development and the playing, and maybe you just do recruiting. Priority number 1 will always be development, by the way. So you're probably already lost if your mindset is more about just recruiting, because if you're just focused on recruiting, you've completely missed the mark. It's about physically developing and doing the right things, so that way recruiting becomes easier. It's not about recruiting, it's about developing. People get those misunderstood. Also, coaches, you've probably heard this before, will help you get recruited. And those are just false promises and hope that you guys buy into, unfortunately, from travel ball and high school coaches that don't really do much. They overpromise and underdeliver. So as far as that triple play system and getting that clarity, turning that clarity into clarity in the chaos. In the chaos. I was like, that doesn't make sense. We're turning chaos into clarity. That's what we're doing. Most parents think that players need more exposure or, a new profile on perfect game or this or that. But exposure without the development is just false hope. And we build players who are actual recruitable, not just visible. This isn't just like a highlight video. It's a complete transformation. We're looking to change habits for our players. And again, what are we not? We're not a recruiting service. We're not a camp. We're not a showcase. We're not in-person lessons. We're not a middleman networking vehicle for your player. We're not a course, we're not a PDF or a YouTube video. So the triple play system breaks down to this. We focus on 3 areas: the physical development, the mental performance, the recruiting blueprint with the one-on-one support. So phase 1, the physical development. So this is some tools that will help translate. If your son's tools don't show up on radar guns or video or in the game reps, he's getting passed up. And we build that strength and that mobility and that explosiveness with a plan designed to fit his position and goals. Because obviously a catcher's needs are going to be different than a pitcher versus a shortstop versus a center fielder, right? So this isn't just about lifting weights, it's about training to be undeniably better than the competition. So that way we don't have to face these troubles. So we're trying to be athletic, we're trying to be fast, we're trying to have those loud tools at the end of the day. And this is an example of what our workout program looks like. We have a New York Mets strength. Very fortunate enough to have that New York Mets strength coach to actually write those workout programs for all of our students. Now, as far as like the physical development, what you just saw, as far as like what one workout program looks like, this is basically a complete wide snapshot of what's going on inside of our physical development. So like we have different phases throughout the year, and throughout each of those phases, we have separate months, obviously. And that was just one day of the month. So like as you can see, this starts to compound as far as our 30,000 foot approach compared to what approach are you doing right now? That's the type of conversation that we need to be starting to have. Now, as far as the mental development and that baseball IQ, So the players that don't get the offers aren't just athletic, they're in the game at a higher level. They're thinking the game at a higher level. And we train that confidence and that composure, because if you show the lack of composure in the game and really that like lack of baseball IQ, it's going to show to these college coaches. So this is what separates prospects from just the players. And ultimately, we want to stay calm. We want to stay smart. We want to stay mature. And that's what coaches will remember. So as far as like my teaching style, because this is important to understand like how that IQ is translated over to your son directly. So I have like some videos, they're GIFs that are looping 2-second videos, and I'm up in there in the top right corner kind of explaining what it is that I do and how to do it. So phase 3 is that recruiting strategy, and this is where we're getting that visibility with more of a purpose. So your son doesn't need to send out 200 emails or go to 6 more showcases that you got publicly invited to. He needs to position himself as the solution for these college coaches, not just like a stat or a number, right? So we help guide him through personalized outreach, video prep, email scripts, how to handle real conversations with college coaches, also visits. I had a student that visited Harvard from California, which was awesome. He set that up, and then of course he wanted to get some prep work with how that conversation might sound, and that's exactly what I did, and that's how I help my students one-on-one. Again, it's more of a mentorship program than anything. So this is what's called the College Commitment Blueprint. No guesswork. It's not luck on how our college prospects go through this process. So this is our like email template. By the way, guys, like if you're watching this on YouTube, you can go down below on the second link. There's going to be a free 7 steps on how to reach out to college coaches course, completely for free. So go check that out right now. That's going to definitely help you guys out through this whole process. You'll also see a little bit of more screenshots on like our tracking system. You're not going to get the full tracking system, but you'll see on the right side of your screen right now, basically, that's how we track to see the status of each of these college coaches that we're communicating with. And this is like what the support looks like. So this is all of our students that join in. This is like weekly updates that will happen as far as accountability every single week to make sure our students are progressing and moving in the right direction. So at the end of the day, like your player deserves a real shot, not just like a hope and pray type strategy with everything that he's got going on. And especially since the game has changed. The portal tsunami has hit. The recruiting whiplash is real. And if you're not adapting, you're falling behind, right? But here's the truth. The families who win are the ones with a system, with a guide, and with a clear plan. What's the difference between an unofficial visit and an official visit? Official visit's after you landed that commitment. Unofficial is before. The triple play system. So again, the physical development, the mental performance, and the recruiting with the one-on-one support, and it is 100% remote, 100% online, and this is not a PDF, it's not a YouTube video. This is real coaching from someone who's actually walked the walk with real accountability, one-on-one, real structure, and real results, right? Again, like JT, JT, he said this was probably one of the furthest ball I've ever hit, about 380. That was at an East Cobb tournament. He had another home run like literally a week later, which is crazy. And again, he was one of those students for me. And I've continued to work with him for over a year now, which is awesome. I started working with him, I think, in the fall of his freshman year, and he is a sophomore currently. So yeah, that's over a year, I think like a year and a half. And he was one of those students that I never had to tell him to do these weekly updates. And throughout those times, he was able to do them, and what gets tracked gets measured. What gets measured gets improved. So as you can see, exit velocity has gained. This was also taken a few months ago, but I know that he's like over 11 miles an hour since joining. Exit velocity, this is the arm velocity as well. So like we can see that there was a plateau around week 20 as far as the current arm velocity at around 82. And we changed up his routines in the weight room specifically, so that way we can push through those plateaus. We don't know, and this is something that's really frustrating on like the eligibility review side of things. Like we don't know if we're plateauing unless we do this, right? We're not tracking everything. As far as like the time shaved off of the 60-yard dash, so these are inverses, by the way. So the current 60-yard dash, he started at like a 7.5, and he got that down. I think he's currently at like a 6.97 or something like that. So I never had to remind him to fill these out. This is part of the accountability. And this is also a huge aspect of like gaining that weight. He gained about 20 pounds. And he said that, yeah, those fly out doubles off the wall are now going over the wall now. So these are the things that happen inside the academy. Again, 8 miles an hour of arm and exit velocity. And we've landed many college commitments, many student wins. So this program works if your son does. Full stop. This program works if your son does the work, right? And you can see all the client case study wins and screenshots from like Derek, Just want to say thank you for the help throughout these past 2 months. You can check out the testimonials on my YouTube channel. If you're watching this on YouTube right now, we have a whole playlist on all of the students' lives that we've changed. I use Game Changer and it shows me the stats. Do I screenshot that and email to coaches? Stats do not matter as much as metrics. Always keep that in mind. And again, like this is JT and his mom, and this is just a client case study interview that we kind of just went over his situation, how he helped. So really we have to think about like what is the cost of guessing. Every season you wait, your player gets older, competition gets tougher, opportunities shrink, and most families don't regret investing in development. They regret waiting too long. Let me repeat that. Most families don't regret investing in development. They regret waiting too long. A lot of my students that join into my program, they're like, wow, I love this. This is amazing. It's opened my eyes. I wish I started sooner. They don't say like, oh, there was so much other stuff that I invested in I'm mad about. It's just simple. They understand that time is the most precious asset that we have. So what's the actual cost of guessing? Well, average college tuition is around $27,000 a year. If we multiply that out by 4 years, it's $108,000. So if we're able to acquire just a 25% athletic scholarship, we're talking about $27,000 in saved tuition, basically a discount of $27,000. But you're already paying for it. You're just not getting the results. Whether it's 4 showcase fees, 1-day events, which is like a perfect game, PBR, baseball fact. Each of those are probably like $1,000, so that's maybe a little bit more. So that's about $5,000. 4 years of travel ball, that's basically perfect game, East Cobb, Marietta, all those things, FTB, Canes. That might be running you up, especially with gas, hotel, flights, a good $25K. Private lessons a week, multiply that out by 4 years, basically $18,000 you're spending on private lessons for what? Maybe you're getting a recruiting database that's going to run you a few $1,000s, equipment, maybe an extra $1,000 a year. So you're already paying $50-ish thousand for 4 years of playing high school baseball, maybe around $12,000 per year. So you've already spent the thousands of dollars, but has it actually moved the needle for you? That's the question that I want you guys to think about. Investing in a system is cheaper than wasting money on random actions. And again, getting into this hamster wheel. So when is the time right? Most families will think I'll wait until next season, but by then, roster spots are already gone, right? Coaches have already moved on, and your player has missed that window for the whole college recruiting process. The best time really to start was probably 6 months ago, especially if your son's probably like that sophomore or junior, maybe even a senior as well. So the second best time is today. A lot of people will ask me like, can we do this in the summertime? Yes. Can we do it in the fall? Yes. Obviously winter? Yes. Springtime's coming up, so like, should we do this during the high school season? Yes, guys. The greatest don't wait for the perfect time to start chasing their dreams and their goals. I've been able to rub shoulders with Yadier Molina, Paul Goldschmidt, Nolan Arenado, Machado, Tatis, Juan Soto. Played against Aaron Judge and walked past him one time, and I was like, holy cow. But they don't wait around to chase their dreams. In what world? Anyway, I want to go over some frequently asked questions. A lot of people will ask me, like, are there other coaches inside the program? Yes, technically, the New York Mets strength and conditioning coach, although like your son's only going to be personally working one-on-one with me. We don't have that much video. It's okay. It's 2026. We'll fix that. We have phones. We'll be able to get that. How long is the program? So we have a couple of different programs. We have a 4-month program. We have a 12-month program. Yes, it is 100% online. So the best way to see if we're actually even a fit for each other is we don't work with everyone, and that is by design. We want to make sure that we're able to get those results. And again, they're for serious players who are actually ready to take action, and the families who are all in on actually making it happen. So we want to deliver results like JT and Derek so we can use them. Like, obviously, we want to make sure that we're propelling those best players and those best success stories, because that's obviously really, really important. So if your son wins, so do we. So if you are interested, book an eligibility review with me or our team member to see if we can help. And I only work with about 5 students every single month to ensure my bandwidth is never stretched too thin. Again, guys, because I want to give you guys some bonus gifts, and I promised you that. So thanks for sticking around. Here's your reward. So there's free 4 bonuses. There's a college email template, an upper body lift, a sprinting program, and a D1 college checklist. You can use these today. You can scan this QR code. And you can also book an eligibility review with me or a team member to see if we can help. So if you want to see if we're a fit, you can scan that left one if you're on YouTube. If you're on Instagram, you can take a screenshot and then press and hold these QR codes. And yeah, guys, best way to do that actually is just through A lot of talking, holy cow. Best way to do that is just through my website, though. There's all the freebies completely for free, no opt-in required. Just go ahead and go knock that out. If that's something that you want, obviously you don't have to. There's a free course on how to reach out to college baseball coaches. I don't know why you wouldn't want to do that, especially if you're a high school baseball player or parent looking to get some resources on how to go about everything that you've got going on. So, all right, guys. Well, that is basically time. So I'm going to go ahead and record our recap, and then we'll go from there. All right, recap of day 30 of 50 streaming every single day. So we talked about how in stretching, what we really need to refer to as our correctives. And there's really 3 areas that most players will fall into the category for, is having tight hips, tight ankles, or a tight T-spine, an inability of that hip-shoulder separation, which is really important. Now we talked about freshman year going to showcases. My freshman year, I went to a showcase, and that's where I found out my 60-yard dash time was a 9.5 second 60. Quite literally, they released the times after like a week, and I was the second slowest time at that event. We talked about really importantly, basically every single plate that you have, you should have a protein, a carb, and a color, and that's going to set you up for success. We also talk about basically after college, if you go undrafted, can we go indie ball? Yes, you can, but then you're going to have to get into affiliated ball and then have to climb the ranks, which is a huge ladder in the minor league system. Now, we talked also about if you go undrafted, out of high school, and if you take like a gap year and don't play any college baseball, that's going to be very hard for you to get back into the game. We also talk about the difference between busy and better. Ideally, we don't want to be in this hamster wheel or this treadmill of not making any progress. We want to be in a structured program, be a little bit more specific, and we also want to have that pathway moving forward. Now, we also talked about the difference between having velocity and command. There's an individual on my college program at NC State who threw 97 miles an hour but had 0 command. And we also had a guy throwing 85 from the left side with a really good changeup, really good command, and he was our Friday night starter. Now, last but not least, we talked about how college coaches love using the word projectable for individuals like this who are 5'10", maybe 110 pounds, who's a shortstop, who's somewhat quick twitch, right? 7'3", 60, a 2027 grad, maybe arm velocity around that 83 miles an hour mark, eggs velocity maybe 94. Nothing super popping off the page, so they're just going to use the buzzword of, hey, you're very projectable, let's stay in touch. And ultimately, they're not ready to make any action on you because you don't have one specific tool that jumps off the page. All right, guys. Well, that's it for today. Welcome. If this was the first time you ever made it to a Coffee and Baseball, I really appreciate your attendance. And yeah, guys. Well, if you guys are interested, click the link in my bio. Go to mendozabaseballacademy.com to learn a little bit more about who I am, what my program's all about, and if you want to take those next steps. An eligibility review with parents is needed, so just keep that in mind, and I'll see you on the next one.
Welcome Evan Mendoza to the program.
Cardinals third baseman Evan Mendoza.
First giving it a look, finds the railing and he tumbles over, but he made the catch. Unbelievable, Evan Mendoza.
Gran jugada en Evan Mendoza, 2 joyas defensivas.
Evan Mendoza makes a great
Rounded up the middle is Mendoza, throws off the shortstop. Mendoza field spins, throws.
Mendoza throw to first in time. Wow, what a play by Evan Mendoza. Mendoza to second for 1. Oh my word, you've got to be kidding.
Evan Mendoza.
For Mendoza.
Mendoza lifts one to left. An inning. Mendoza, that one's sailing back there, and it's gone.
Now, those are some of the plays and the insights of playing baseball at the highest level, not just posting about it. Now, let's flip the script. Here's what my students and families have to say about working with me.
Just share his stories of the kids asking him, what did you do? And his one answer was one word. Evan.
It's an overall great program to improve your metrics, mental approach, your velocity, and your outreaching strategies. Because there's a ton of players I know that are way better than me that had 0 offers because they don't know how to reach out to coaches.
Pretty much every possible number when I've gone up. I was high 70s and now I'm aiming for mid to high 80s and hitting the same thing. I was high 80s off machine and now I'm able to put some balls out in the mid 90s.
JT's motivation to want to do it at home, be proactive in his baseball career, and we are able to do these things for him, and it's self-motivated and he's taken that action. As a parent, you want to be able to say yes to something like that.
It's been making me feel much more confident. Like now going into the season, I feel I have all the ability I need and I can just play and trust that all the work I did will pay off.
I started working out, I was about 120, 115, about 160 now. I trusted it and it worked. If you want to go get it, it's not going to come to you.
My EV was about 75 and my body weight was around 155, around that. Since I joined that, I'm up to almost 180 now and I'm hitting 80s, around mid 80s.
How much more kind of committed he was and how much more confident he became in his own progress.